We are looking at a truly wild stack of sources today for our Beyond the Shell weekly synthesis, covering the archive up to May 8th, 2026.
Yeah, it's a really dense week,
Mhm.
honestly.
It is. We've got ancient Vedic sky maps, the latest Sunday astrology charts, and even some clinical peer-reviewed DMT research papers.
Right, which sounds like a random assortment, but they all converge perfectly.
Exactly. And the mission for this deep dive is to tie all of this together to fundamentally rethink the space you're sitting in right now.
Because the way we usually talk about the simulation theory is, it's very limiting.
Very. When people talk about the idea that we live in a simulation, the metaphors are always incredibly metallic, right?
Yeah, like you're trapped inside a giant server rack or something.
Right, you imagine taking off the VR headset of reality, and underneath it's just, green lines of code, wires, and silicon chips.
It's very binary, it's digital, and honestly, it's a little depressing.
It really is. It's a very mechanical, lifeless view of existence.
Well, and that narrative assumes that at the base level, the universe is just a dead machine running a sterile program.
Which leads straight into that fatalistic uh, prison planet mindset where we are all just trapped code.
Exactly. But when you actually read the synthesis of the research this week, that whole silicon motherboard concept completely shatters.
We are moving away from the tired idea that we live in a literal computer simulation. Instead, we are looking at a cosmological landscape that is actually alive,
We are stepping out of the fear-mongering and walking straight into the cosmic control room.
which represents a massive paradigm shift in how we understand reality. We are seeing a profound convergence in the sources this week.
Right, where observer-conditioned cosmology from modern physics is aligning perfectly with ancient spiritual traditions.
They are both pointing to the exact same substrate.
Yeah, and that underlying foundation isn't digital code, it is consciousness.
Okay, let's slow down and translate that because observer conditioned cosmology is a pretty dense term.
It is, yeah.
If consciousness is the actual bedrock, the foundation of everything, then what are space, time, and matter? Because they feel pretty solid to me right now.
Well, think of space, time, and matter as differentiation events. They're simply the rendering layer.
Okay, the rendering layer.
Right. Observer-conditioned cosmology essentially suggests that the universe is not a pre-existing giant physical box that you are simply standing inside of.
So it's not just a room I walked into.
Exactly. Instead, the universe acts as a perspective engine. It continually assembles itself physically around the fact that you are looking at it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Space and time are not the base reality. They are just the dashboard of the interface.
The dashboard. I like that analogy. But if space-time is just the dashboard of this massive perspective engine, I have to ask about the mechanics.
Sure.
How did we get into the driver's seat? Like, how does a consciousness actually boot up into this specific rendered environment?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah. It makes me think of your first breath on Earth as a literal system login screen. You take that breath, the system authenticates you, and the physical interface loads around you.
The sources actually take that exact mechanical logic and apply it to what they call cosmic stagecraft.
Cosmic stagecraft.
Yeah. If you have a dashboard and a login screen, you have an operating system running it all.
Makes sense.
Our archive, from those ancient cosmological maps to modern interface theory, repeatedly describes Earth not merely as a rock floating in a void, but as a heavily managed theater stage.
Okay.
In this framework, birth is the casting process.
Wait, let me push back on that a bit. Birth as a casting process sounds highly poetic, but mechanically, what does that actually mean? And well, are you saying a soul just reads a script beforehand and jumps into a body?
It's a bit more structural than that.
Mm-hmm.
The sources suggest that we are actors stepping into tightly written roles governed by the timing of our entry, our login. We step onto the stage governed by deeply complex environmental scripts. But the grand tragicomedy of the whole production is that the system requires immersion.
Right, you can't know you're in a play while you're acting in it.
Exactly. The moment you step onto the stage, you forget the world outside the theater. You play the character so fiercely, identifying with your given name, your job, your temporary struggles, that you lose your actual soul to the role.
Okay, that makes total sense of why ancient mythology operates the way it does.
How so?
Usually when we read the Greeks, the Romans, or the Egyptians, we treat them as literal bedtime stories about superhuman families squabbling in the clouds,
Right, as just fiction.
But if Earth is a stage and the universe is the production, then we shouldn't be reading those pantheons as historical figures. We should be reading them like a corporate org chart or a theater playbill.
Yes. The gods were never meant to be read as literal characters. They are operational labels.
They are celestial job titles.
Exactly. When you strip away the local cultural costumes, the job descriptions remain identical across civilizations. Let's look at Saturn, for example.
Okay, Father Time.
Right. In a mythic sense, he's Father Time, often depicted as a stern, restrictive figure. But operationally, within this perspective engine,
What is he?
Saturn is simply the administrative office of time, limitation, and boundary.
Wow.
It is the necessary software function that gives a life a beginning, a middle, and an end. Without that boundary function, the rendering engine has no structure. It would just be formless chaos.
And to make that practical for you listening, this isn't just abstract philosophy.
No, not at all.
When you feel a sudden crushing deadline or a sense that you are hitting a wall in your career and cannot move forward, you are essentially interacting with the Saturn office.
You're experiencing the frequency of boundary.
And then you have Jupiter. Not a giant guy with a lightning bolt sitting on a throne, but the office of expansion.
The scheduler of seasons. The keeper of the gates.
Mercury, similarly, is not just a fleet-footed trickster running errands, right?
No, Mercury is the broadcast signal. It is the messenger function at the very center of the map, transmitting new data and the frequencies of awakening outward into the rendered environment.
And we absolutely cannot forget the moon. The moon gets so much focus in these esoteric sky maps.
It really does.
We treat it as just a dead rock causing the ocean tides, but the sources frame it as an operational facility.
It's a transfer portal and a processing zone for consciousness entering and exiting the stage.
There's that line from the archive this week that has just been echoing in my head. Before your birth, you left your past inside the tomb, and through the moon you found this room.
I love that quote. It is a brilliant compression of the entire soul transit architecture.
It really is.
The moon acts as the doorway to the rendered room. But mapping out this celestial bureaucracy forces us to confront a much more immediate problem.
Which is?
If these planetary offices are managing the stage, how do they actually interact with us down here in the physical realm? They are, after all, millions of miles away in the rendering.
Exactly. How does the administrative office of Saturn actually reach my desk on a Tuesday morning?
They interact through frequency governance.
Frequency governance.
Right. This is perhaps the most unsettling yet ultimately liberating concept we extracted from this week's Sunday Astrology Insights. The architecture operates through a cosmic weather system of thought.
Okay.
To put it bluntly, your thoughts are not entirely your own.
Hold on. If my thoughts are just radio signals I'm picking up, doesn't that completely destroy the concept of free will?
Not exactly.
Because if I am just an antenna, how do these sources account for personal accountability? Am I just a puppet on a string?
You aren't a puppet, but your mind is primarily a receiver. Think of it like a radio.
Okay, I'm tracking.
Intrusive thoughts, negative loops, sudden despairs, or brilliant flashes of inspiration. They arrive at your station rather than being authored by you.
So the source matters.
Right. The lower realms of the architecture feed heavier survival-based impulses, while the center of the map broadcasts clarity and awakening.
So where does free will come in?
Free will isn't about controlling the broadcast. Free will is about what you do with the signal once it hits your receiver. Do you identify with it, or do you observe it?
Oh man, that reframes everything about mental health and personal growth.
It really does.
It means we aren't constantly generating our own misery or our own genius out of thin air. We see this frequency governance playing out directly in the Sunday astrology outlook for the 12 signs this week.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Astrology isn't about predicting a generic horoscope where, you'll meet a tall, dark stranger.
Right, that's the pop culture version.
It's about reading the cosmic weather system hitting your specific receiver. For instance, if you're a cardinal sign right now, the architecture is pushing you for boundary testing. The restrictive signal of Saturn is loud.
But the purpose of that Saturn restriction isn't to punish you. It is actively asking you to define the edges of your vessel.
Okay, so practically speaking.
If you are feeling overwhelmed at work or in a relationship, that friction is the signal demanding that you establish a boundary.
Right. And for the fixed signs, the incoming signal is heavily focused on endurance. It's demanding that you recognize where you've confused social conditioning with your actual soul.
That's a huge one.
I want you to think about this listening right now. Are you playing a role because your family wrote a script for you? Are you living out a financial script of being the struggling artist or the corporate climber just because that's the character you were cast to play?
The incoming frequency right now is prompting you to drop the character.
Drop the character. And finally, for the mutable signs, the messenger frequencies, that Mercury broadcast, are dialed way up.
You are likely receiving an influx of data.
These are the sudden clarities, right? The impulses that feel like shower thoughts but actually reorganize your entire worldview.
Exactly. They feel like direct downloads from the center of the map.
So the core challenge for you this week, regardless of your sign, is emotional discernment.
Are you blindly acting out the celestial script, reacting to every stray frequency of anger or anxiety that hits your antenna?
Or are you reading the dashboard and consciously choosing how to navigate the stage? Because in this model, awakening isn't some mystical glowing light descending from the heavens.
No, awakening is just signal separation.
Signal separation.
It is learning to identify which frequency you are currently living inside and realizing you don't have to be the weather. You can just hold the umbrella.
Wow, you don't have to be the weather. I love that.
And we can take that internal frequency governance and mirror it perfectly on the macro level.
Right, zooming out from the individual mind.
Exactly. If we zoom out to the global geopolitical stage, the exact same mechanics are at play. The cosmic egg, the structured architecture we exist within, is not a static, dead dome.
It breathes.
It breathes. History expands and contracts in shapes called torus fields.
Let's define that for a second. When you say a torus field, what should we be picturing?
Imagine a continuous energy loop, shaped somewhat like a donut or a cord apple. Energy flows up through the center, wraps around the outside, and pulls back up through the bottom. History follows this exact respiration.
So it isn't a straight line of chronology marching endlessly forward from primitive to advanced.
No, history is breath. Golden ages are periods of openness, the inhalations where the torus field expands and higher frequencies pour in.
And the dark ages.
Dark ages are the exhalations, the constrictions where the boundaries tighten and heavier, survival-based frequencies dominate the globe.
So when we look at the news and we see massive macro events, systemic breakdowns, economic shifts, shifting societal foundations, it's not random chaos.
No, it's the visible result of the shell inhaling and exhaling.
But how does that actually manifest physically? Our sources had an incredible reframing regarding the opening of the ozone layer.
Oh, this was fascinating.
Usually we just talk about that purely as atmospheric chemical damage caused by pollutants, but this cosmological model views it differently.
Right, because the physical realm is downstream from the architectural realm. The chemical breakdown we observe is the rendered symptom of a structural change.
Okay, so what is the structural change?
In this model, the thinning of the ozone is viewed as the paradigm collapse of a highly pressurized membrane.
Whoa.
The overarching torus field is expanding, venting pressure, and physically allowing new cosmic frequencies and data streams into the incubator.
It completely shifts how we view friction in the world. Eclipses and major planetary transits act as scheduled software glitches in the cosmic interface.
That's a great way to put it.
It's like the system briefly lifts the curtain just for a second to show the public its own threshold mechanics. The geopolitical friction we're stressing over, it's just the architecture shifting its weight behind the scenes.
Right. And if the system occasionally reveals its threshold mechanics to the collective through these scheduled sky events, the next logical question is what happens when human consciousness deliberately approaches that threshold on an individual level?
And that leads us to a fascinating intersection in our archive this week, combining this ancient cosmic map with modern clinical altered state research.
Specifically, the DMT experience and the phenomenon known as the waiting room.
This part of the research blew my mind. For anyone unfamiliar, people who experience extended state DMT consistently report being transported to a highly structured geometric space, often called the waiting room, before they encounter other intelligences.
Yeah, it's a very common report.
Why is there a waiting room? If you are launching out of your body, why wouldn't you just shoot straight out into the infinite cosmos?
Because, as the synthesis of our sources posits, this space is neither a chemical hallucination produced by a dying brain, nor is it a final metaphysical destination.
Then what is it?
It behaves exactly like a threshold protocol. It is the gatehouse of the cosmic egg.
It's a perceptual checkpoint.
Yes.
It is the exact moment where your dashboard stops behaving like a sealed, solid world and becomes a permeable membrane.
And the entities that people consistently report encountering in that space, they aren't random space aliens or figments of imagination.
What are they?
They are boundary intelligences. They are the Border Patrol, the guardians of the interface.
Which perfectly aligns with the celestial bureaucracy we unpacked earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every border requires border control. Every gate has a keeper to ensure that the rendering engine maintains its integrity.
And this is exactly where I want to push back hard against the dark corners of the internet. You see so much prison planet doom scrolling. You know, the idea that the firmament is a cage meant to trap and punish us, and that these entities are our wardens harvesting our energy.
It's a very popular but very flawed narrative.
Exactly. Look at the ancient soul routes in the sky maps. You have the astrological gate of Cancer, which was designated for the descent of the soul into matter, and you have the gate of Capricorn for the ascent back out.
Right.
Gates imply purposeful transit. You do not put perfectly scheduled two-way transit doors on a prison cell.
The sources strongly reject the penitentiary model. They reframe the cosmic egg not as a prison, but as a developmental incubator.
An incubator. That makes so much more sense. It's a place where raw consciousness is stepped down, matured, tuned, and prepared.
Because if we were exposed to the raw, unfiltered frequencies of the center of the map, it would fry our circuits.
Right.
It would tear our individual localized awareness apart. The shell protects us while we grow, the same way an eggshell protects an embryo.
It is a brilliantly engineered environment for the evolution of the observer, but this raises a profound historical problem for me.
What's that?
If this massive, intricate architectural system of gates, planetary offices, and breathing torus fields is real, how did humanity completely forget it?
Well, here's the twist we didn't forget.
We didn't.
No, it was hidden in plain sight the entire time. Think about the limitations of ancient language. Before modern technical vocabulary existed, before we had words like interface, dashboard, rendering engine, or downloaded, how would you preserve a massively complex cosmological operating manual across thousands of years of human history?
You would have to turn it into a story.
Exactly. You use compression formats, the holy books, the ancient myths, the sacred geometries. These are not primitive fairy tales invented by people who didn't understand thunderstorms.
They are mnemonic operating manuals for the sky map.
They are zipped files of cosmological data.
Because they didn't have the word system administrator, the planetary offices became gods, angels, and saints.
Yes.
Because they didn't have the phrase threshold protocol, the astrological gates of Cancer and Capricorn became judgment scenes and pearly gates.
And the cycles of the breathing shell, the inhaling and exhaling of the torus fields, causing global paradigm shifts, became epic stories of massive floods, apocalypses, and resurrections.
It fundamentally changes how we read our own history.
Yeah.
We looked at sources referencing the Dendera zodiac, which is a massive ancient Egyptian sky map carved into a temple ceiling, right?
Yeah, a brilliant piece of cosmology.
And the concept of Mount Meru, the sacred five-peaked mountain in Hindu, Jain, and Buddhist cosmology that represents the center of the universe.
Right.
When you analyze them structurally, they aren't competing religions. The Bible, the Vedic texts, the Dendera zodiac, the legends of Atlantis, Mount Meru, they are not literal histories fighting for supremacy to see who is right.
They are the exact same user interface.
Yeah.
They're just wrapped in different local, cultural costumes.
Mind-blowing.
They were all designed to teach localized consciousness how to navigate the rendered environment, how to spot the boundary guardians, where the center of the map is located, and ultimately, how to remember the route home.
Synthesizing the astrology, the philosophy, and the hidden mechanics of this week leaves us with a very grounded, calm perspective.
It really does. We are not trapped in a dead digital simulation of green code.
No.
We are inside a brilliantly engineered system of stagecraft, frequency governance, and soul transit.
Every breath you take is a login screen.
Every season is a scheduled script managed by a celestial bureaucracy.
And every myth handed down to us is a map waiting to be read.
The universe is not a place you are standing inside of. It is a perspective engine rendering reality around you for your own development.
Which leaves us with one final, mind-bending question for you to take into the week ahead. If your thoughts are simply being broadcast from this cosmic architecture and your life is a scripted role on a stage governed by planetary timing, who is the you that is listening to this deep dive right now? Take a deep breath, read the dashboard, and enjoy the stage.